This week on The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16 Reunion, Part 2.
Because you're lying.
And you don't think you've been lying too? And
you're
wrong
what?
too.
What have I lied about?
You posted about my mom saying she did something egregious to your mom.
She absolutely
First of all, why are you even
you know
bringing
she
up
did.
my mom?
What did she
Girl,
do? Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be recapping the second part of the reunion for Season 16 of The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Let's get right into it. Okay, so let's get right into this reunion, you guys. Before I do, I gotta say, so last week I did my recap for part 1, and then the following day, which was a Monday, Brit Eady decided to post what her reunion look would have been, because remember, she did have her dress ready and everything else, and she actually did a magnificent photo shoot. And I think that regardless of how anyone feels about Brit, anybody with eyes and a brain will see that she slayed. I mean, she would have been the best dressed without a question. I mean, you can like her or not like her, but she looked amazing, flawless, I'll even say. So yeah, what was the point of her putting that? I don't know, but she did say that, you know, she chooses herself, and you know, I can respect that to a certain extent, absolutely. But let's get right into this. So we pick up right where we left off. She had just made this ridiculous, delusional, stupid statement that Phaedra Parks needed to secure her spot on the show, and that's why she hired this Marcus guy. Phaedra, one of the faces of Bravo in 2025. Yeah, that Phaedra needs to secure her spot. How dumb. I'm glad that Andy and Porsha were like, it's pretty secured. Angela then turns into a fan, and she says to Porsha, you believed her, but she allowed you to carry a lie on another person? She's talking about Candy. And she says to Porsha, why did you say that I set this thing up? Porsha says, listen, to me, the whole thing just sounded ridiculous. From the June bug to him going to the mall, the Godfather, the receipts, like everything was just crazy. Phaedra says, he doesn't even know me. I don't even know him. Angela says, but he knows your brother. Which, that doesn't really mean anything. I mean, why am I going to be incriminated because my sister knows somebody, you know? Doesn't make any sense. But Porsha says to Angela, listen, I don't think you set it up yourself, but I am saying that this just doesn't make any sense. Andy asks Angela, what would Phaedra's motivation be behind this? Angela says, she's a self-producer, just like you said you knew Charles, right? You said you knew him? And Phaedra's like, yeah, I hung out with him once, like 10 years ago. Angela says, that's a lie. She says, you don't know my husband. Everything you've said about me is a lie. Phaedra says, I haven't said anything about you because no one knew who you were. No one knew about you. Angela says, but the ones who do know me don't know you. The rooms you want to be in. Phaedra says, well, I'm in all the rooms, darling. Angela says, well, you're not in the rooms that I'm in. Phaedra says, yeah, I'm in the rooms that be winning Oscars and Emmys. Those are the rooms I'm into. And then Angela says, yeah, because you're breaking into those rooms. You don't have tickets into those rooms. What? This makes no sense, Angela. Phaedra then asks someone for their phone. She says, I gotta call my brother. So she calls him. He answers. She says, hey, I'm in the reunion. You're on speaker. So there's this person who accused Angela's husband of having an affair on her. She says that the reason I know him and paid for him to be here is because you know some woman named Kim Bleep. And then he says, I've never heard of no Kim. Angela says, well, they're Facebook friends. And then the brother says, I have like 1,000 Facebook friends. I don't know all of them. Angela then says, well, that's her brother. So, of course, he'll deny it. But, you know, just like she sent someone to say to me, I'm the one who has the hands. So now this is another accusation that Angela is putting out there about Phaedra. She says that Phaedra and some girl were at a game, and that this girl who Phaedra was with came up to Angela and said, I'm the one who's got the hands. So Phaedra's like, then why hadn't you never mentioned that before, Angela? And then Angela says, why would I? Phaedra's like, well, why wouldn't you? Andy then asks Drew if she thinks Phaedra actually did this, if she hired the guy. Drew says, well, when we interrogated him, he sounded scared. Then they ask Cynthia, and Cynthia says, listen, if Angela set this whole thing up, it would be insane. Angela, you thinking that Phaedra did this to secure her spot? I thought her spot was pretty secure. Andy then asks Kelli, and Kelli says, well, I don't know. At first I thought it might have been Brit. And Phaedra says, well, obviously, there was a list. He was, they let him in. And listen, and then Angela says, oh, well, did you make the list? Listen, could there be a possibility that Angela is right? Maybe. There is a 1% chance about anything in the world. But in her case, it's 99% sounding crazy. And a little concerning, not gonna lie. A little concerning. Like, this whole thing is just dumb as hell. Andy asks Angela if she has any other beef. Her and Kelli address some comment that Kelli made about Angela's marriage early on in the season, but it was an unseen scene, so why even talk about it? There was a question saying that they didn't think Angela actually was 43, and she pulls out her birth certificate to prove that she is 43. Andy says that Phaedra, in her confessional, she had said that Angela was the oldest looking young woman she's ever seen. And Phaedra's like, yeah, I said that, but that was after we had filmed all this, her accusing me and stuff. And then here we go again with the fan, Angela, saying, well, when you came onto the show, you were looking real rough. If I look 43, you look 63. And I have seen a lot of people, ever since Phaedra made that comment, I will say, I've seen a lot of people say, well, Phaedra looks older than Angela. Yeah, because Phaedra is older than Angela. She's supposed to look older. Angela is very beautiful. I will not take that away from her. I think she is very, very pretty woman. But she, just in my opinion, she does not look 43. She looks 53. And that's just a fact. Look at Cynthia. Look at Cynthia Bailey. Look at how she looks, and she's 58, you guys. Look at, the Grand Dame from Potomac. She is 60. So, I don't think it's, rude or, reaching that some of us think that Angela looks a little older. And I'm sure she's 43, but she just doesn't look 43. But anyway, Angela says that she is starting a line of fans, like the little fans that she was carrying through the season, which is nice. Then in regards to her properties, she got foreclosures on them. She was spending an unbelievable amount of money on them. And on top of that, her mom died, which was very sudden and unexpected, which is very sad. I felt very, very, very sorry for her. She said that, her and her mom wanted to be on the show together. Like, she wanted to show more of her mom's story on the show, and she never, they never really got to do that. There's a question for Angela asking, does she think that Drew had her back as much as she had Drew's back? And Angela says, to be honest, no. There were several times where Angela was, getting into it with someone or few people in the group, and Drew would sort of disappear. And Angela says that Drew also did this at the finale. And Drew says, oh, well, in situations like that, I just didn't know what to say. Everyone sort of agrees in the group that Angela definitely rode for Drew very hard, and Drew didn't really ride for Angela as much. But again, Drew says, maybe I couldn't show up for you as much as I wanted to because of everything that I was dealing with. So Shamea says, I just gotta say this. Why is it that Drew can excuse not being there for Angela because of what she was going through, but when it came to me and Porsha, you all wanted to pick our friendship apart and say how lopsided it was. So then Shamea and Drew start to go in at each other. They were going on each other a lot. Drew's like, don't do that. I want so much more for you. But then they move on. Andy asks Phaedra why did she skip the Married to Medicine reunion, and Phaedra says, I had nothing left to give them anymore. They didn't want me there, and I'm a housewife. And, at the time, I thought it was a little bit it was a little whack that Phaedra skipped the reunion. But in hindsight, I kind of see, what really would have been the point. She knew for a fact she was already on Atlanta. She wasn't going to be back in Married to Medicine, so why even bother show up? So I get it. Andy, he asks Kelli if she likes the little nicknames that Phaedra gave her, like little garden gnome or strawberry shortcake, and she does. She takes it positively. That is one thing I like about Kelli, is that she'll take it off. She'll take the good side. Andy says that we saw Phaedra, have this sort of like big sister energy after she dormed with Brit in Grenada. And Phaedra says, yeah, because at that point I saw how she was self-sabotaging herself. Porsha says she thought it was great to see that, because she says, I don't think we've ever seen a housewife give a newbie advice like that on camera. When I started, Nene and Cynthia definitely gave me advice, but it was off camera, so it was nice to see this on camera. And she is right. I remember that. I thought it was really, really cool that Phaedra did that. I remember she said to Brit, like, you gotta make an effort. If you gotta invite people to your house, have a charcuterie board, have drinks, be ready, be open. And I almost feel kind of like, wow, that happened towards the end of the Grenada trip. How is it that Brit didn't know that from the very beginning? But anywho, Kelli and Shamea jump in there, and they say that Shamea had also been giving advice to Brit, and then Shamea says that Brit actually had a lot of negative things to say about Phaedra before she joined. Phaedra and Porsha. But then Phaedra just says, listen, you will have experiences with everybody in this group, but a lot of people are making very strong conclusions on someone based on one experience that they've had with them. Angela says, is that directed at me? And Phaedra says, it could. We had a bad experience, but when I reached out to you after your mom died, I hope you know that was real. We're going to be petty, we're going to be shady, but life is too short. Then we get another question about season 9. Oh my gosh, how many times are we going to talk about season 9? Porsha, the question said, Porsha, how can you be cool with Phaedra after all the lies and everything? Porsha pretty much says, look, there was a lot of time and conversations, and we worked to have our friendship back. So then they ask Shamea, because remember, season 9 wasn't just about Phaedra, Porsha, and Candy. It was also Shamea. Phaedra had said that Shamea and Candy were hooking up, and she said that Shamea sleep with everybody else's husband, but no one talking about that. Shamea says that she, Porsha, and Phaedra have never actually addressed the topic to really resolve it. Phaedra does say, well, let's clear this up, because I've heard you bring this back up on a lot of interviews that you've done, but we've had a conversation. Before I came back, we were on the phone and we were good. Shamea says, yeah, but in that conversation you mainly talked about Candy, not so much about me being in it. She tells Andy that she has moved on, but then Angela's like, wait, I don't think you have, because you've brought it up this season to us in some events. You have brought it up. Phaedra says, look, Shamea, I will apologize, but I don't, listen, I didn't want it to be out in the public, and you even told me in our chat that it was laughable, that no one believed it anyway. Shamea says, yeah, but why did you say it? And why would my best friend sit there and let that be said? And of course I'm going to, dumb it down so I won't be as hurt. So then Cynthia says, you see, Shamea, that's the thing with you. When things bother you, you say that you try and pretend like they don't when they clearly do. But Phaedra does apologize. She says, I apologize. And then Shamea says, thank you, I accept. And now moving forward, if I'm ever asked about it, I'll just say Phaedra's apologized and we've moved past it. And then they take a lunch break. The men then arrive, Ralph, Dennis, and Charles. Also, Czech was there. He brought Phaedra some flowers. Porsha looked real happy to see Dennis. They really do love each other. Kelli and Shamea talked. They're like besties now. Also, they shot this reunion in Georgia. Because you know how they film most of the Housewives reunions in New York? Well, they're filming it back in Georgia, which I think Atlanta, most of the times they have filmed in Georgia. But this looked like a brand new studio. I loved it. The dressing rooms look super nice and everything else. Okay, so when they come back out, they address one of the biggest topics of conversation this season, Kenya and Brit. Andy reads the tweet that Kenya posted that day apologizing for what she did. She apologized to Brit, for everyone. He also read Brit's Instagram story where she says that the pictures were not even her. So everybody's like, whoa, this all happened and it wasn't her? Shamea, though, she says that maybe Brit knew it wasn't her and just played along. And of course, Kelli agrees. Andy says that when Brit was on Watch What Happens Live, she was adamant that Kenya was coming for her a lot. The ladies say they never saw that. Angela says that's why she wrote the question when they were at the bank, because, Brit had all this animosity towards Kenya, and none of them really saw Kenya be shady towards her. There's then a question for Cynthia asking, why did you have grace for Brit but not any for Kenya? And Cynthia says, well, that's not true. I did have grace for Kenya. I just didn't agree with what she did. Andy asks her about Kenya's quacky fans who kept harassing her because she didn't have Kenya's back, quote unquote. So he asks, does she regret her stance? Cynthia says, I'm never going to compromise my integrity over someone who I know or someone who I love over what they've done. Brit shouldn't have ever brought up a gun, so I'm not team anyone. I'm team what's right. Porsha says that she was there. She did feel Kenya's fear and shock when she heard the gun threat. And Porsha did try and, protect Kenya. But of course, she knew Kenya is a loose cannon. And she knew that Kenya immediately after that started doing a background search about Brit. Shamea then says, wait, Porsha, but you said that somebody in this group had sent Kenya the pictures. Who was it? Porsha says, it was Drew. Kenya told me it was Drew. Because you guys remember that Porsha said this on social media. She said somebody in the group is the one who sent Kenya the pictures. Well, when she posted that, she says Kenya called her and she was like, I didn't say that. But Porsha said to her, no, Kenya, you did. Like, you told me it was true. But anyway, the point is, Porsha knew that Kenya had been digging things about Brit, but never in a million years would she have ever imagined that she would put all this stuff on poster boards at her event. She just couldn't believe it. She also says that she was kind of pissed at Kenya. Like, why would you allow yourself to do that? And she says that one thing she can say, though, is that Kenya definitely regrets what she did and that she knows she was wrong. Cynthia says that was the last day that she spoke to Kenya. She says, I feel like I'm the only one who she stopped communicating with, which is sad. But Kenya wants yes people and around her, and she's never really been a good friend to Cynthia anyway. She ruined her proposal. She talked bad about her wine or whatever the hell she had going on at the time. And I don't fault Cynthia, and I feel bad for all the attacks that she was getting. But that's one of the things I feel like is wrong with the world today. The double standards that people have. I think that if everyone just focused on what was right or wrong, regardless of the person, or, if it's someone they like, someone they don't like, if they just, really, really, really judged what was right or wrong rather than the person doing it, I feel like we would live in a much better world, but people are just too immature. Okay, so then we switch over to Shamea's season package. Definitely a lot to see. She had a lot going on this season. When they watch that, they talk about her beef with Brit towards the end of the show, which I think they need to stop talking about Brit because she's not there. Shamea, she begins crying. She says that she would never fake what her daughter was going through, like Brit said. She said that the only reason why Brit fell out with Shamea was because Brit was mad that Shamea was becoming friends with Kelli. She does say, though, that Shiloh is doing great. She had 2 surgeries. The most recent one was in her ears, but it's good because she can hear better. Shamea has a new surrogate. And there was also a question asking Shamea if there is a mandate that your husband demands a boy. But Shamea says no. Like, it's a marriage. Like, he gives me what he can, and I want to give him what I can, which is a baby. I will say, I don't like it when other people try to, like, project and shame other women for wanting to have a baby for a man. Because, excuse me, how else is he supposed to get it? So I think that if a woman, of course, it's a woman's choice, right? But if she says, I want to do this for my husband, I want to give him a boy, or I want to give him X amount of children, I don't think anyone should be saying, don't do that. You don't need to give him a baby. Stop, okay? It's a woman's choice. And a choice means, it doesn't just mean she doesn't have to have one. It means that she can have one if she wants to please her husband. They also mentioned Drew and Shamea's little rivalry with their music. They had a lot of shade. Drew brought up that remember Shamea had made some comment about she don't speak 5 languages. Well, Drew bought her the 5 love language book, which Kelli took. Drew had said that she had never seen someone struggle so hard to reach a high note. So Shamea's comeback here is, well, she's never seen someone struggle so much to put on a showcase. Shamea then says that Drew lied about a bag she had. And then Shamea pulls out the bag, the fake one, and she says that it's $130, not $6,000 like the one that Drew claimed she had. And then Porsha's like, I'll take the fake one. I'll take it. And then Shamea's like, well, let's see how we end today. It'll depend if I give it to you. Andy then asks Porsha about Brit telling her that Shamea had shown the messages between them. And Porsha says that Brit was definitely being malicious when she said it, but she does believe that it happened. And I do believe it too. Shamea definitely showed them those messages. Shamea says, look, all I told them was that Porsha did not celebrate me getting a peach because Porsha was going through some stuff. So Porsha says that's a lie. And they're about to get into it, but Andy's like, hold on, let's introduce the topic. So they roll the footage of their friendship and the fallout that they had this season. After taking a look at those scenes, which were a lot, it was heavy, Andy asks what is the status of their friendship now, and they say they have not communicated. Porsha says, I could have gotten over all this stuff from the season, but my issue at this point is the things that she's been saying since the season, in interviews, The Breakfast Club, Candy's channel. She says that when Shamea came into the show, she came with a scheme and a plan to sabotage her. Porsha says that Shamea wanted to use the information that the fans already knew of to weaponize against her, like the fact that she didn't go to her wedding. She says the fans knew that, and that's why he brought it back up. Because remember first she had said it was because of a medical condition. Kelli kind of tried to joke about it. She was like, Porsha, can you really not sit behind a plane? And the Porsha's like, don't laugh because it's a real diagnosis that I have. But this season, Porsha did say that she didn't go because she was having issues with Shamea. So like, which one is it? So Porsha says, this happened many years ago. We've had a beautiful friendship since. So for me to see that you formed an alliance with the two new girls. So then Shamea interrupts her and she says, I tried to include you in the alliance. And Porsha says, I am not finished and I am going to be heard because I came here for the truth today. I am not in no alliance. Why would I be in an alliance with Kelli, who kept coming for me, and Brit, who I didn't even know? So now they're fighting about were you in the alliance or not. It was too much. Andy says, well, Porsha did wish you a happy birthday, Shamea. And Shamea's like, yeah, and I texted her back, but she never answered. And Porsha's like, yeah, because you continued your smear campaign. Why are you fighting me? Shamea says, why are you fighting with me? Porsha says, because you're lying. Shamea says, and have you not been lying too? I was like, wait a minute, Shamea, what do you mean too? Shamea then says, you posted something egregious saying something about my mom. And then Andy asks, what is it? And that's where the episode ended. Listen, you guys, I am so over this reunion. Can we just cut it here? Like, I don't really need to hear anything from part 3. Yeah, the husbands will be out. I'm sure Drew and Ralph will get into it. Charles will say something. Listen, this was such a disappointing season and reunion. I can't even. But you guys, please let me know what your thoughts were about the whole Kenya and Brit of it all. And more than anything, the Shamea and Porsha. Whose side are you on? Let me know in the comments. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a great one. Bye.